So often people hear the shadow self or the ego and they get afraid, they get angry, they get defensive. When the shadow self and the ego are something that we should understand and integrate into ourselves instead of being afraid of it, instead of pushing it away, instead of vilifying it. Because the shadow self isn't scary. It's just a part of you. And it is a part of you that deserves to be understood just like the other parts of you. So what's up, Soul Tribe? It's Reborn here, and today we're going to be talking about the shadow self, shadow work, how they interact with each other, and how they in turn affect you and your self-acceptance and your love of yourself. We're also going to talk about how to do shadow work, and I'll be leaving you with 2 journal prompts at the end of the video so that you guys can get started on your shadow work practice. So without further ado, let's get into it. Now let's start with what is the shadow self. Now the shadow self, also commonly known as the ego, is the part of yourself that you actively reject, the parts of yourself that you dislike, the parts of yourself that you harp on, the parts of yourself that sometimes you use as a mask to hide the true, authentic, vulnerable parts of yourself from the world. Now, what is shadow work? Now, shadow work is the act of working on that shadow self through various methods of self-reflection and introspection to try and understand and integrate your shadow self into yourself and into your spirit through your healing journey. Essentially, it's self-acceptance practice. It is learning to love yourself, every part of yourself, for what you are at this very moment. Now, even deeper, shadow work is digging through the memories and the experiences and all the things that you've gone through in your life and how they have shaped you, trying to find the limiting beliefs that have developed because of those memories and those experiences. Retraining our mental to not only no longer believe those limiting beliefs anymore, but to no longer live by them, i.e. no longer living solely by the shadow. Doing this shadow work will dig up mental and physical and emotional sensations that could be really freaking uncomfortable. So in some cases, depending on what you're digging up, it is highly suggested that you do this with somebody that is trained, but it is also imperative for you to be able to do some of these practices on your own and on your own time when you are comfortable. And we'll be getting into what these practices are later in the video. Now, if you're watching this video, you're probably somebody that thinks of themselves as being on a healing journey. And being on a healing journey means you're trying to find your way to your highest purpose, your most satisfying life, your most peaceful life, whether that is through abundance of financial means or through abundance of relationships or understanding of self or knowledge or whatever. Now, doing shadow work, especially from the beginning of your healing journey process, can really help bolster your healing journey. Learning that your actions are absolutely controlled by your limiting beliefs will allow you to break through blockages that you probably didn't even know were there, allowing you to reach goals and aspirations and dreams that you never thought you'd be able to reach. Doing the shadow work helps you feel capable of reaching those goals. It gives you the will and the courage to go after what you truly desire. And the confidence too. Though sometimes you aren't always moving in confidence, but that's okay. Shadow work is accepting that you have to give yourself grace as well. You have to understand that things are not always going to be perfect. Things are not always going to work out the way that you desire them to, and it's about learning how to regulate yourself and process those things. Oftentimes, your shadow self can keep you blinded from things that are actually good for you when it is placing these negative beliefs or these experiences that you've gone through before and placing the results of those experiences on this experience that you're going through now. The experience that is actually good for you, but you're assuming is bad for you just because of previous experiences. It teaches you that you don't have to be holden to things that you have gone through, that you are able to grow and you are able to go past them. Shadow work can also help you understand when you're clinging on to things that are not good for you. On the flip side of that point, it can help you understand when you are holding on to habits or people or possessions or things or systems that are not serving your highest purpose anymore. And it can help you understand why. Whether that why is out of familiarity or out of comfort, or if it's because you feel trapped and you need to find a way to get out of it. Shadow work also, and this is so important, teaches you processes to regulate your emotions. Shadow work teaches you ways to calm your nervous system and ground yourself back into your body and keep you in the moment instead of rushing off into either a past experience that you went through or being anxious of a future circumstance that you aren't sure is even going to happen. So you're not scared of the future and you're not stuck in the past. And of course, shadow work is also a way of releasing the pent-up frustrations and the anger that people on a healing journey tend to hold and bottle up within themselves. It gives them a method of release of these trapped emotions that either you're trying to bottle up now or you bottled up 5, 10, 15 years ago. It helps clear all that out so that it is processed and you can move on to what you truly desire. Now, before we actually get into how to do the shadow work, it is so important to understand how shadow work and the shadow self affect your self-acceptance and the way you show up in the world outside of like your limiting beliefs and stuff. Now, the way you function as your shadow self, whether it is controlled or not integrated, or you're acting out of your shadow self most of the time, these things directly correlate to your self-acceptance and your self-worth. And then it goes back into the self-feeding cycle of how it affects your shadow self, which then affects your self-acceptance, which then affects your shadow self again. Now, why is that? Well, because when there are parts of ourselves that we actively reject or we actively ignore, that is directly affecting how much we accept ourselves. If we don't accept this part is still a part of us. This part that we reject and that laughs too loud, the part that tends to interrupt people a little bit more than you want to, that is super critical of the people around us, that's still a part of us. And allowing us to accept that that is what we tend to do will allow us to shift and shape into what we actually would prefer to do in situations where those habits tend to come up. So naturally, when you reject parts of yourself, you're going to have a low sense of self-worth. Now, there is the other side of this where the shadow self can create an inflated sense of self-worth. Both of these things can be just as damaging to ourselves and the people around us. It is simply understanding that your worth is inherent and your worth is not dictated by your accomplishments or your achievements. It's about having a balance. So there's a bit of a loop trap here where you can get stuck trying to fix yourself and finding things that you don't like and then trying to fix. The goal is not trying to fix. I know that's confusing. We're not trying to fix ourselves. We're trying to integrate and accept ourselves. Do you feel that you have a tendency to be more mean to people than you'd like to be? Then you're not acting as your true self. You're acting as your shadow self and compensating with the shadow self. Editing Ree here. I wanted to clarify with the compensating the shadow self. You're covering up your true nature of your desire to be kind in a situation where being unkind has protected you before. So the shadow self is using being unkind to protect you in a situation where that isn't necessary. So your shadow self is allowing your triggers to control how you're reacting, and integrating the shadow self and understanding the shadow self's natural reaction to this will allow you to guide yourself away from that reaction or that normal reaction to one that's more aligned with the self that you wish to be, with your more authentic, more natural self. And that could be the more kinder self. And that could go both ways of in a situation where usually you are more passive and the shadow self is keeping you passive in that situation. You could, through your healing, actually want to be more assertive in that moment rather than being more passive if being passive is what your shadow self is used to doing. So integrating the shadow self will allow you to determine whether it's time to be more passive or if it's time to be be less passive. Now, the more shadow work that we do, the more understanding we have of ourselves and the less judgmental we will feel of ourselves and others in turn. We will understand that everybody is on their own healing journey. Everybody has their own trials and tribulations that they are going through. Everybody has their own shadow that they must learn to integrate or not integrate, whatever works for their journey. The point is, it teaches us to give ourselves grace in times of hardship. It teaches us to give ourselves understanding that sometimes circumstances are out of our control, but we are able still to learn and to grow from those experiences. Shadow work can really help with your self-acceptance, because the more you understand yourself, the more sure you become of your decisions, the more sure you become of the people that you interact with, the more sure you become of the ventures that you go for, the more sure you become of the travel that you desire, the things that you do for yourself. You become more confident in the decisions that you're making. You build that trust back with yourself through shadow work. Now, shadow work also urges you to break self-betraying habits like people-pleasing, doing things for others' sake, doing things to not upset somebody else, walking on eggshells. When you're doing that, you're not living authentically. You're not living to your highest purpose. You are not living comfortably within yourself. You are dancing around somebody else. And in that moment, you're living for them. You're not living for you. It helps you build confidence. It helps you learn to love yourself. It helps you be confident in the way you dress, in the way you look, in the way you interact with people, in the people that you interact with in the first place, in the careers that you do. It helps you build confidence in the decisions that you are making for yourself, because you know that you are not acting out of fear. You are not acting out of doubt, out of guilt, out of shame. You are acting out of your most truest and most authentic version of yourself. It allows you to take off the negativity blinders, and allows you to see the bigger picture and see the situation around you for what it truly is. It allows you to see the good in situations rather than always seeking out the negative. It allows you to see situations sometimes even just neutrally. You don't have to be absolutely positive in every situation, showing you that most of the time the ultimate terrifying negative outcome is not the reality of the situation, and it pulls you back into the infinite space of possibilities, and that a lot of those possibilities are in fact good ones. Now, admittedly, shadow work can also make your self-acceptance a little bit more difficult, especially in the beginning, when you're not used to your grounding practices, when you don't have your journaling methods down, you haven't really built that trust back with yourself yet. So going into these vulnerable experiences can feel extremely, extremely uncomfortable. And that's why we want to take it slow and start with things that are not quite as heavy hitters and grow in intensity over time. And again, sometimes doing something with a professional, whether that is with a Reiki practitioner or a therapist, is ideal for the more extreme experiences that need to be processed. Please, therapy is a necessary step. I'm not a therapist. I do encourage you and anybody considering it and thinking that it may help you, go to therapy. It's a form of shadow work. It helps. Okay. Furthermore, shadow work will put a spotlight on those uncomfortable situations. It's going to put a spotlight on the parts of yourself that you feel are less than desirable. But these are moments of discomfort that are necessary for long-term comfort. Now, sometimes you can start to question your own judgment as you go back through your experiences and you find situations where you weren't the best in that situation, where it wasn't necessarily your environment around you, but you were the one pushing through situations that you're perceiving as negative. Because as you go through shadow work, you can find relationships that you thought were good for you were not good for you. Things that you went through were not quite what you thought they were at the time. You have done things to others that are more damaging than you thought they were. But what matters is understanding that now that you're actually putting in the work to try and understand yourself better, certain things may fall away and new things will come in that will align better to what you actually desire for your life. Over time, that trust will build up again. You just have to get through the initial discomfort to allow that trust to start to build again. There will be things or passions that you thought you had initially, or passions that you did have initially, that have shifted to a different passion. You will find that there are habits that you do that are not helpful for your mental state or helpful for the life that you're trying to call in for yourself. So you have to allow those habits to fall away. Essentially, it is allowing you to take control back of your life instead of living with your life on autopilot, just sort of going with the flow. Though you still are going with the flow, but like in a different way. It's about not being judgmental of yourself and giving yourself the grace and understanding that you are growing past those things. You are putting in the work to do what you need to do to live a more fulfilling life for yourself and your loved ones. Now let's talk about how to actually do the shadow work. We've talked about what it is, the self-acceptance, all that jazz. So how do you actually freaking do it? Well, there are so many different ways to do your shadow work, and so many different ways that shadow work processes the energy that is within your body and integrates these things back into yourself. Now, one very popular and very common way is meditation. Meditation is one of the ways that helps keep you regulated and grounded within your body. And there are various different ways to do meditation. It's not just sitting in a quiet room all by yourself. You can do meditation in so many different ways. Now there's guided meditations. If you're not comfortable guiding the meditation on your own, you can find guided meditations anywhere: Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, whatever service works for you. You can probably find recorded tapes of guided meditations in like bookstores and other things like that. Essentially, these guided meditations are you turning on a video or an audio track or a podcast or whatever, closing your eyes, tuning in, following the directions, and allowing your body to flow in whatever way the video is guiding you through. And a great place to start with guided meditations easily is a Joe Dispenza meditation.
And now, can you become aware of the space that all of space occupies in space?
It can be kind of awkward sometimes when you are just getting into it and you're not used to the practice, but they are so worth it, and they can be so life-changing. Solo meditation is just as effective as guided meditation. For some people, it can be more effective because it's so flexible. You can bend it to your own meditation practice. Pretty much it's your home style meditation. I personally meditate through my singing. I also sit and do the silent going within, becoming aware of my body and becoming aware of my mind and the way it's interacting with itself. But you can also go through listening to music. It doesn't even have to be meditation spa style music. You can listen to heavy metal if you want to. It doesn't matter, it's your practice. What is important to understand about meditation though, is it is not an act of silencing the mind. It is an act of sorting through the thoughts in the mind. It's like having a junk bucket and having a not junk bucket. Now, another way that you can meditate without necessarily the self-talk or like the guided meditation is breath work. Breath work is so imperative and important for regulating the nervous system. Breath work is honestly a skill that I believe everybody should have, and something that everybody should understand, and something you should probably learn to do pretty early on. Now, this focuses specifically on breathing techniques to regulate the nervous system and ground yourself back into your body. Breathwork reduces anxiety. It can help you with your depression. It can release tension in your body. It can send you into elevated states. Breathwork can do so many things. And some of my favorite breathwork techniques would be box breathing, inhaling for a certain amount of time, holding for the same amount of time, releasing for the same amount of time, and then holding again for that amount of time, and repeating that over and over again. That is box breathing. Or the Wim Hof breathing technique. Definitely go look that up. I'll put a little clip in right here.
Are you ready? Here we go. Round number 1. Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out. Last one. Fully in and let go. All right, 1 minute breath hold from now on.
But look more into that. It can be a little difficult, especially when you don't have quite the breath capacity at the start of practicing this breathing technique, but it relaxes the body and the tingles. And of course, there's just taking simple deep breaths with a hand on your heart and a hand on your tummy. That also counts as a breathing technique. It's a connecting to yourself technique. Now, meditation is great for grounding and help keeping yourself regulated while you're doing your shadow work. But how do we actually dig into the experiences and stuff like that? Well, that can actually happen during your meditation practice too, depending on how you're digging into yourself, what experiences you're thinking about as you go further in, feeling your body and seeing how it reacts to the thoughts that come up in your mind, and giving yourself a moment to regulate and allow that feeling to be there before letting it pass. The next amazing form of shadow work, and admittedly some of the most important forms of shadow work in my personal opinion, is self-talk shadow work. Now this is journaling. This is mirror work. These are things where you directly speak back with yourself. And you can do that in meditation as well. But these are things where you are intentionally speaking with your subconscious, because that is where your shadow lives. Now, with journaling, if you have a hard time just sitting down and just writing on a piece of paper, just going at it, you can always find prompts. You can find questions and things that can guide you through the journaling process. And journaling is also not only writing in a book. That is my next video, so please subscribe so you don't miss that next week. So if you're interested, hit the subscribe button. Just okay. You can find journaling prompts all over the internet. And to make it easy for you, I'm giving you 2 prompts at the end of the video to help you start with this practice if you haven't already started it for yourself. Now there's also freeform journaling, that just writing randomly on a piece of paper that I mentioned. When you feel this deep emotion, this deep aggravation, or this deep frustration or sadness, or even happiness, and you don't quite understand why it's there, it is putting pencil to paper or just speaking to a voice note and just allowing the emotion to flow, getting the frustration out and seeing what is at the root of it by the time you get through the end of your free-flowing journal entry process. But if you need something that's a little bit more structured, there are products and books and things that you can find online, like the Shadow Work Journal, that can allow you to follow a specific process in your shadow work if you're somebody that does need a little bit more guidance through the process. You know, the Shadow Work Journal is something that is essentially a book full of prompts that allow you to delve deeper into your shadow work in ways that you may not initially think about at the beginning of your journey. And that's why it's so important to have resources like this video, or like the Shadow Work Journal, or various other shadow work products and methods that will allow you to get things going and keep things going when you're not necessarily sure how to get these things going. Now, mirror work is literally sitting here and looking at yourself in a mirror and talking to yourself, or just looking at yourself. It can feel really weird if you're not used to that. It can feel really, really strange looking yourself in the eyes and telling yourself affirmations at first, especially when you have a habit or pattern of self-loathing. Now, this is amazing for self-acceptance, because when we tend to stare at ourselves, we tend to see ourselves in a different way over time. Because oftentimes, all the time, you can't see your own face. That's obvious. We are physically putting into action the act of looking at ourselves instead of relying on how others look at us. This should be intentional work, where you are using things like affirmations. You're expressing the gratitude that you have for yourself, because it can be very quick and very easy to get caught up staring at the things that we don't quite like about ourselves and obsessing and scrutinizing those, instead of appreciating them and loving them and appreciating that they are there and that they are the way that they are. And sometimes, no, you simply don't like something, and that is okay. But you cannot like something and accept that it exists, because the more you try and fix something, or the more you try and push it away, the more you are actively rejecting yourself, and that works against your shadow work practice. That works against your practice of attempting to accept yourself as you are in this moment, which is what shadow work does and encourages. And I've even heard stories of people saying that mirror work has changed how they see themselves physically, and I think that has something to do with body dysmorphia. As a non-binary person myself, I have pretty bad body dysmorphia. So sitting with yourself and seeing yourself for what you truly are, and understanding that those features are just as lovable and just as accepted and just as acceptable as every other part of you, is essentially one of the pillars of mirror work and how it works as a shadow work process. Now, next up is somatic therapy. Somatic therapy is essentially a way to physically shake up the energy in your body and get it out. Now, that is through things like EFT, which is the emotional freedom technique. I EFT tapping. It is my primary method of shadow work. It is the thing that has brought me from very, very, very hard, scary times to being able to even make this video right now. So EFT tapping has changed my world, hands down. Now, emotional freedom technique, or EFT tapping, is taking two fingers and tapping on specific meridian points on your body as you go over an experience or a feeling or a fear or whatever. And as you do, your body is essentially clearing out energy blockages within itself and expelling that energy through whatever way your body expels that energy, whether that be through yawning, burping, sometimes farting, fatigue, deep breaths. EFT can take a little bit of time to work. You can be tapping on the same thing a few times, but the more you do it, the more you are expelling that energy. So deeper blockages are going to take a little bit more work, and more superficial ones are going to be a bit easier to work out. Oh, I get so excited about EFT. EFT is sort of like a self-Reiki, and Reiki is actually our next example of somatic therapy. Essentially, Reiki is a form of energy manipulation using movements or voice or tone or whatever to pull the energy physically out of your body, using actions to physically pull the energy out of your body. Editing Reed cutting in again to expand on the Reiki section. So Reiki is more than just using actions to pull the energy from your body. Reiki is utilizing spiritual connections and spiritual tools like crystals and sound bowls and aromatherapy and color therapy and all of these complicated things together to bring you back to those situations and pull the energy out of your body. And of course, actions like sweeping motions with the crystals or with your hands are involved in doing something like that, but it is mostly putting you in a sensory environment that allows you to re-access those experiences that you are trying to release and you are trying to get past through your healing journey. And you can do that either on your own, or you can do that with a certified Reiki master, Reiki practitioner. Now, other forms of somatic therapy that some people might not even think are somatic therapy are things like yoga and working out. It is moving the body, physically moving the energy in the body, releasing those endorphins, that stress, through your breath or through your sweat or through the excessive motion. Dance also does this in the way of moving your body and shaking up the energy centers and shaking up the blockages and using emotional release and artistry and creativity as a way to expel these uncomfortable emotions, these uncomfortable blockages, and these uncomfortable situations. It doesn't even have to be some form of special dancing. You can just two-step back and forth. You're moving so long as the intention is clearing the energy within your body. And finally, there's binaural music and subliminals. Now, these are definitely more of an acquired taste. Not everybody likes subliminals. This is music being played at a specific frequency to calibrate the waves in your brain. It's a little woo-woo sciencey, but it is music played at a particular frequency to help regulate the nervous system, to help maintain focus, and to help reprogram your subconscious mind from thinking one thing to thinking a different thing. Now, subliminals and and binaural music are amazing for longer videos, like when you're going to bed. Like if you're somebody that listens to white noise, or if you need some form of sound at night, perhaps subliminals or binaural music is a good thing to replace those things to try and help things while you're sleeping. Now I'll be leaving you guys with your 2 journal prompts. Now you can leave these in the comments below, or you can write them in your own journal, but I do urge you to share in the comments so that others who see this video can see that they're not the only ones on this journey, can see that they also desire better for themselves and are looking for a means to get to that point. Prompt number 1, what is something that you do right now that helps you self-regulate, and how does it help you? And prompt 2, what effects are you hoping that shadow work will have on your personal journey? I'll also be answering these questions in the comments down below so that you guys can see my own answers. Now subscribe to join the Soul Tribe, and I will see you beautiful souls next time. Bye-bye.